Hi, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Spilling the Spirituality. I am Hilary, and I am here with my pal Rob. Hi, Rob.
Greetings and salutations. Hi, Hillary.
Hi. And today we are going to discuss. Last time we talked about death and all that comes with death. And we're doing these uncomfortable topics. And we thought we would follow up our death conversation with a conversation on grief. And there's a lot of facets to grief. Um, what are your thoughts on grief, Rob?
This is a great follow-up to the death conversation. And again, I love that I'm going to say it again, I love that we're tackling the beyond the comfort zone topics because once we start having this chat, we're both in unfamiliar territory. Like these are things that we are maybe facing in our own lives that may not be as comfortable to talk about as other things that we might have talked about a lot in the past, like abundance and manifestation. But the world is about so much more than that and applying those things. So thank you for going with these uncomfortable topics. And so we talked about death last week, and I think a natural outcome of talking about death is that process of grieving and loss and where we go with it. And I think for me, talking about it related to losing a person in our lives is important. And I'm certainly at an age, I'm in a generation now where you're starting to see this more. People of our generation are having parents that are getting older and perhaps taking care of them and then losing them, or friends of after age 50 you start to be more aware of friends that might have passed from high school or college or whatever. So I feel like there is this era of loss that we're in all the time, but past a certain age you become hyper aware of the loss in life and how we deal with it, how we let it go. God bless you. God bless you. And how we face what we've lost and then move on from it. And I feel like this can be as a result of losing a person, or the various losses that we have in life. A lot of us have transitioned from relationships, been divorced or widowed, had jobs that we were perhaps let go from, that we've had to deal with that if that was our identity. But this period of losing something that meant something to us and how we uh, take all the good from it and then let it go and move on from it. I mean, I feel like that's what the grieving process is for me. So, you know, I, I'll ask you before I talk about mine. So, have you lost people in your life that you found yourself grieving for, or feeling like an attachment to it, or even if either health, in a healthy way or in a non-healthy way?
Okay, and so you're speaking about just loss
Yeah.
in general. It doesn't have to be death.
Yes, I mean, if it's easier for you to identify something that you have lost, then yes. But like, something in your life, a person in your life, or an experience that was this colossal loss that you had to then face and move on from.
Yeah. I mean, I think absolutely yes. And what comes to mind right now is not necessarily the death of a person, but sort of the death of a friendship. I've been on both sides of that, where I've walked away from friendship and created loss for the other person, which I know was very difficult for them. And then I've had the same situation. What comes to mind for me specifically is there's a friendship that I had in high school with, oh my God, the coolest chick. I just loved her so much. And we were a freaking frack and we did everything together. And then um, I went to her wedding. She came to my wedding. The guy that she was with was very abusive and was isolating her from her friends. And to this day, I mourn the loss of this friendship because I have very few people that I would consider in my inner circle. And this is someone that I really felt like would be, we'd be friends forever. And so I know she lives in New Jersey, but I've never been able to track her down. I don't know what happened to her. I can't, she's not on social media. I can't find her. So yes, I've moved on, certainly. But when I think about her or I look at pictures of her, I remember the old days and I wish and I keep trying to put into the universe a way that we could somehow find each other again. So if I think of my biggest losses, that's what comes to mind for me, a friendship. Yeah.
And
How about
that's a
you?
significant, and I think I've talked about a similar experience as well. I feel like because my first grandparent died when I was 10 years old, and it kind of set the stage for the kind of experience of loss that leaves that space in your heart, that space in your life where everything changes. That person's not there for whatever regular experience you had of them. And I feel like that groomed me um, in a way that has been helpful. Like, so, I right away from 10 years old, you know, I knew what it was like to have that space that made you miss that person and long for that person, but also have to move on without that person.
Yeah.
And it doesn't it doesn't make losing a person or a situation any easier, but it did provide a level of familiarity to me that it didn't. So as I got to be an adult, it didn't feel so foreign when that would happen. That being said, I feel like now recognizing losses of people in my life. I had a partner. I was 30 and he was 36 when he passed away. And, his death was, I think, the first opportunity that I had to grieve as an adult. And because it wasn't a family member, because it was someone who was a chosen family member, I think it was a little different because I had to make sense of why that person was in my life. So like when family members die, like they're there and it's a linear experience that you can make sense of in that way. But this was somebody who came into my life and we found out he was dying in midway through our time together. And so making sense of it was, I think, a growth experience and a maturing experience. So that also allowed me to see the kind of scope of how my life changed as a result of this person, both when he was alive and then when he was gone. It was like a pivot point. It was like there was life before him, and then there was life after him, and there was life before he died, and then life after, all of which he made possible for me. So that was significant. But since then, I've been fired from a job. Uh, recently had a professional situation that ended, and I had to make sense of that. And in all of it, I feel like I've been trying to get in touch with the grieving process of what that means. Sometimes I think it's healthy, like I lost both my parents within 2 years of each other, and I feel like I missed them and grieved, and that I was able to move on in a pretty healthy way. At the same time, I've seen other people that maybe weren't as close with their parents as I have in like the public world, or and they create whole lives that had to do with this loss in their life, and that I haven't done. So that has made me question sometimes, like, well, maybe I haven't grieved in the right way because my mom died of leukemia and I didn't get involved in the leukemia cause, or my partner died of AIDS. I did work for AIDS organizations for many years after that, but I didn't. That it was a part of the root of why I was doing it, but it wasn't like the driving force. So sometimes I feel like, well, maybe I've ignored that grief. Maybe I've ignored that loss.
But is there a way that we're supposed to grieve? And what I'm wondering while you're saying all of this is, does one grieve the death of a human the same way they would grieve the death of a friendship or the death of a career or whatever? I wonder, do you think it's the same? process where you go through, sadness and anger and,
Right. Well, one thing that inspired this conversation is I was talking to a good friend who listens to us and watches us, and she was talking about loss in her life and saying that she can't stand the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross,
um,
stages of grieving, because her experience, and I would have to agree with this, is not this linear thing. It's like today I'm stunned, tomorrow I am incapacitated, the next day I'm fine, I'm laughing. So, the linear implication of that process really escaped her. And I've heard people apply those stages to lots of different grieving, experiences, loss experiences. The one thing that I do know, and this is kind of the root of another discussion we were having today, is that everybody's different. And so while I think it's important to recognize ways that we can share in this process by recognizing kind of benchmarks that make sense that we can both relate to, everybody's process is differently. And no one can tell you how to grieve that loss of a friendship or that it is the same as losing a person. My my ghosting friendship experience, I can honestly say, just like experientially, is one that seems to have kept me locked and blocked way more than any of the death experiences that I had.
Interesting.
So,
Why do
I
you
mean,
think that is?
because the person still is around, and
Um,
is I'm still aware, social media and common friends. So it's like the the pain is not necessarily there, but certainly the actual experience of that loss is always in my face, because I'm watching someone that moved on without me as I moved on without them. And there's an element of kind of like, that's the way that it's going to be until one of us is not here anymore, because it's always there. So
and
it
it
has
must
been very
be.
painful.
So you still see this person on social media? You can like keep up with them, you're saying that
If
way?
I choose to, I have the opportunity to keep up with them. I
That's
don't,
hard,
but
right? That's
it's
hard.
hard when now social media, when you've chosen to not, be friends on social media, be connected that way, but then you keep getting these reminders of, because they're friends with friends that you're friends with. So
Oh,
that's like the temptation to engage and then to spiral again when I feel like, after, I gave myself the amount of time that we were friends to feel like I was going to spiral, and that was a long time. So it took, because they say, again, one of those grieving norms or cliches is that it takes as long to get over a loss of a marriage, for instance, or death, as as long as you were in it. So that was 12 years, and then 12 years later, I was like, am I free of this? I am, for the most part. The sting isn't there,
yeah.
but getting a reminder on Instagram, maybe this person follows this person, is
It's
that's
got
it's
to
like,
be really
please,
hard.
yeah,
And I
just
would think
leave me alone.
if there's somebody in your life that passed that you were close to and you see like on Facebook or whatever,
Memories.
memories, that's got to be hard too, because then you get pulled into that feeling again, which makes you wonder again, is social media helpful for us
Well, so that's a
or
great
not so
point, because
much? Because if we pulled that out, we wouldn't constantly have those reminders.
but I do love those reminders. I think that's the difference, and that's the way that we can, because what others have told me, and what we've counseled others in our lives that have come to us about, is, getting beyond that loss means recognizing that everybody's here in our lives for a reason or a season. So
Right.
perhaps, but that's easier, I think, in my opinion, to experience in a death situation than it is in a friendship, because the people still are existing, and they're existing in it's a very wide orbit, so we're not connected anyway. But the orbit is still social media, 6 degrees kind of
Yeah.
connected. So um, it, it I think it gives me the opportunity to really see the death of the friendship as a death that is like a death that I don't want to erase the memories or the person that I became because of this person. Like, and that's usually my tendency. Like, well, if we weren't friends after this happened, were we ever friends? Was I really the person that I became because of this friendship if it didn't really exist? Like, that's where my mind goes. And when I can see it as a death of some sort, then there's a finality to it that allows me to say, oh, okay, I'm all of that was real in my mind. So then it was real, period. Like, whether it was for this person or not, it doesn't really matter. I grew, I became a better person. I loved who I became as a result of this experience. I'm not going to let their deciding to not be friends take that away from me, which
Right.
is easy to do. In a death, it's in somewhat easier to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I might have a different viewpoint on this, for especially for social media. I think because I think about people who get ghosted a lot and have to, you know, see these reminders on social
Right.
media. How does one heal if somebody sees, oh, okay, now they're having parties without you, now they're at a restaurant without you, now they're on vacation without you. I mean, that could really, that's the kind of thing that if you didn't have to see that, you might be able to heal better. I mean, it's
Right.
sort of like this battle that you're constantly going through with your ego, I mean, your ego self isn't really who you are, but so much of social media is ego. And it's I don't know. I think that would be really difficult. I mean, I see what you're saying, but I'm just speaking for myself. I don't think that and it's interesting too, because sometimes, you have that strange like voyeur where you're creeping on someone's, let's say you're creeping on that person who rejected you, and even though you're not friends with them anymore, you choose to click on them and see what they've posted, and you're looking
Right.
and you're feeling in all kinds of ways while you're looking at it. I don't know. I just don't know how it's helpful to your psyche in the long run, I guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I don't I used to creep. I don't anymore because I did recognize that it just wasn't healthy to do
Yeah.
that. It wasn't helping me move on. So fortunately, like, but that is, and that's different than, well, fortunately, we kind of separated before the rise of the social media experience so that I don't get a lot of memories of that friendship on Facebook. So it's someone's, I'm not posting it, it was, we were not friends before the rise of all of that. So I am grateful for that because it doesn't hurt for me to get a reminder of, a vacation with my parents. But I think it would hurt to see a reminder of this great time that I had with a really good friend, which actually, now that I think about it, I do have another friend who that happens with as well. And it is a little painful. It is to
It's
see a
painful.
friendship that, yeah, existed at one time that doesn't now.
And also the dangers, even if let's just take it to a loved one now, the death of a loved one. I would think, if you see these reminders, yeah, you want to be able to say like, oh, that's so beautiful and I'm so grateful for that time. But what it can also do is re-trigger you again, and then you're going through the dying process again, and you're going through, did i did I say the right things? What if you didn't say you loved the person and you wished you had? What if there was unfinished business that never got said? It can sort of start the journey over. I mean, spiritually, we're taught that now is all that matters. So so that's why the grieving process is kind of dangerous, because yeah, grieve it in the now. But if you keep revisiting, like, let's say it's a job loss, and you keep having, images show up about this job loss that you've come to terms with, And now you're seeing it again. And now your ego's like, maybe it was your fault. Maybe, it's like putting all these ideas in your mind. And spiritually, we know, like, it's over with. It's done. The timing was right for it to be over. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just feel like I disagree on this, because I feel like the power of everything in life is being in the now, you know, and it's taking us back to the past, which could bring on a whole host of emotions, if not depression about something.
I think like one of our favorite people that we follow together often says, when we're triggered, it's really about us. And so,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna put myself in a place where I'm feeling like I'm abusing myself with memories. But there are times though that even with people that I died, especially now more than ever, like I can viscerally experience them again, either, and so sometimes I will put myself into the space where I was with my partner Mark, for instance, when he passed, and that I I enjoy going to that moment because it was so intense and so, you know, it was very beautiful. I mean,
Right.
I'm also fortunate that I did. My parents died. I felt like we were good. Like I did not. They did not leave here without me feeling like I had done all I could in the relationship, which is great. Um, Recently, out of the blue, I encounter a friend who has a relationship with his mom he's younger and the mom's my age. And so I am now seeing a dynamic of a relationship that, while I maintain that I was good with my own mother when she passed, when I see this relationship and I recognize that this has elements of a possibility that we could have had,
Mhm.
that's a little triggering. It's like, if I just would have worked a little hard, if I just would have pressed a little harder at being authentic and
Right.
honest, maybe we would
Right.
have changed. So that comes out of nowhere, and I don't. It's just an opportunity for me to be at peace with what was, because ultimately I at least I want to believe that I'm where I'm supposed to be and everything is where it's supposed to be. And
Yeah.
so that
True.
wasn't my relationship. It's never going to be, but
Right.
it was a little trigger, not expected,
Yeah. And I
you
think
know.
the solution, with whatever grief a person is going through is, I always say this, I don't even know where I got it from, is to face it, to feel it, to free it, right? I mean, to push it away, because you're right. If something's triggering you, then it's worth exploring, maybe not analyzing it, but feeling it. And then when you feel it, it leaves again. I mean, we're like on this one continual loop in this lifetime, right?
That's
Everything just
true.
kind of keeps coming back again and again for higher learning. And for sure, I mean, I guess that comes up in grief of any kind. I just noticed for me, like if I can't fall asleep at night, usually what will keep me awake is thoughts about the future, or did I handle something well in the past? And when I go there, boy, I'm not going to sleep, because now I'm like, oh, maybe I should have done that. And like, that's silly, because we are perfectly imperfect. And that's what this journey is all about, is celebrating our imperfectness. Um, so I agree. We have to feel it. We have to see it, so we can move through it. But at the same time, I don't know how healthy it is to stay in it. Um, because I think for me anyway, it gives me feelings of possibly regret, or maybe it could bring up anger. Maybe it could, things that you thought you dealt with. You know what I mean? You could just start spinning and then you can't get
Sure.
off, right? You're just spinning. For
I
me, it
think,
looks,
I think, yeah, I think recognizing that it could be any of those things at any day. So one day
yeah,
I'm going to be obsessed with, you know, with whatever the loss is. One thing, the one place I have seen a lot of people, our generation, all generations post, especially on social media, is the loss of pets. Now, I
okay.
more than ever, I have seen people freely express their grief. And I oftentimes will see someone who had to put their dog to sleep, for instance. I barely know this person that I'm friends with on social media, and I see this post, and I understand that grief. Like I know what
Yeah.
it's like. You know what that's like. That is a loss that is so rich that transcends anything if you've been close to a fur baby. And you know, I love when I see that, because I love that it's almost like a club that you all belong to. Like once you get it, and if you all understand that we all go through it, then you know everybody handles it differently. And so recognizing that one day I'm going to be obsessed with my dog's loss or my friend's loss, and the next day I'm going to be strangely fine and moving on, and to not be afraid of those days that you might feel like you're spiraling. If you can realize that you're the thinker, not the thought, which is kind of Course in Miracles
Mm,
related. You know, if you can pull yourself out and, like we keep saying every week, recognize when it's happening to you, then you can honor. And I love what you said, like, which is we can't really move on from it until we recognize it. So that's always the first step.
yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Loss of a pet speaks to anyone who's ever had a pet. And it is funny. I feel like people who post stuff about their animal, um, everybody's feeling so much compassion for him for them because they've been through it. And I think that that's really what goes on in general with compassion is like, if you've been down the same road someone else, if you've lost your partner and then you see somebody else writing about their partner, you feel so much compassion, and compassion is great
True.
because it connects us. um yeah, I guess it's hard just to know when to get on and off this bus, and I think we know once it becomes unhealthy. I can tell in myself once it becomes unhealthy, when the thoughts are just spinning and I'm in judgment of any kind. That's not healthy. Like if I'm noticing and feelings of love or um memories come shining back, that's beautiful. But if it's more, feelings of regret or anger or
Regret.
all of these things, it's fine to feel them. It's not so great to be stuck in them. And of course, when you first experience loss and you're going through grief, I mean, definitely, that can take a long period of time. I could only imagine, God forbid, like anybody who's lost a child and like what they've gone through, or someone who loses someone suddenly and tragically.
Right.
I would think that grieving process, I'm not sure that grieving process ever ends.
Yeah, I
I
agree with
don't
you. Like
know.
I've been, I would say, privileged and blessed that thus far, it has not been that sudden kind of like,
Right. Like
you
I
know,
can't really thankfully speak to that either, but I feel a lot of compassion for people who have gone through that. And so I guess on a good perspective with social media, it can bring us together, in that way. It can offer compassion and help and love to people who need it, when you're going through it. But yeah, but it is interesting. I feel like I was not a psychology major, but I feel like loss and grief in general, I really have a feeling that they're very similar, the process, whether it's a person, a career, uh, what else, a relationship that ends, like all of those things, because you find yourself going back to them again over time and re-examining them. So I think that's kind of interesting that it really doesn't matter. So when we were talking about what we were going to talk about today, I was like, okay, so are we talking about grief with like death, since we just talked about death? But really it's the death of anything. It's the ending of it's the period at the end of the sentence.
Yes, yes, and putting it in context of your life, and instead of focusing on that loss as something that is now no longer with you. I think spiritually, our opportunity is to see how it can live on with you. So,
Yeah.
what we've learned, the people that we've met, like so many times, the one job that I was, let go of when I was fired from back in 2014 was the year that my mom died, and was the year that I turned 50. Like all of it happened within a month. And so the loss was pretty, I was fired and my mom died. It was, and yet I had the most joyous 50th birthday. Like it would all happen right before I turned 50, and yet I still had the most amazing birthday. And it was this time where I realized that I couldn't take any part of that out of it. It all had to be like, it just was the way it had to happen. And so my job, I remembered the people that I met and the person I became as a result of knowing them. And with my mom, it was, you know, those beautiful moments that we had that last week, and decisions that I made that I'm so proud of just me for having the wherewithal to make them. It all made sense.
So
So
then that's a good point. So then I wonder, with our remaining 5 minutes that we have, if we could look at grief as a celebration. Is that possible? Because
I think it's the grief as the opportunity. Yeah, exactly.
we're
To
so taught that grief means sadness. But what if grief meant, like what you're saying is, you went through all of this stuff and yet you saw the beauty in all of it. You in some ways you were celebrating it.
Truly, I mean, the 50th birthday celebration was a great like benchmark, because I am given it. You were talking about being in the present. I'm given this opportunity. Like, okay, I'm fired, and my mom just died like 3 months ago, but I'm turning 50. So, am I going to not enjoy my 50th birthday with my husband and my best friends at the time because these things happened? No, that doesn't even make sense to me. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't denying it. I wasn't like, oh, well, there he goes, pretending like none of this happened to him. I really wasn't. I was
Right.
literally celebrating in the moment that was mine to celebrate. And I didn't feel like I was pushing anything away to do it. I still thought about my mom, because I turned
Yeah.
50 and I wish that she was there to watch me turn 50, but I didn't ignore it. And that whole time, it was very traumatic for me, but it was, I think, the year of my greatest consistent loss. And I still feel like I had the most the tightest rein on my emotions and understanding it, because I had no choice. Like, I wasn't going to curl up and go away, like, because that
Right.
wasn't going to happen.
Which
I'm not
is
going to get to my
really fantastic, and to me very evolved. And I think a lot about, it sounds so morbid, but I think about like funerals and like eventually, what Kevin and I were talking today about the kind of funeral we would want. And I really think it would be beautiful to start changing the paradigm of death and grief and make it more of a sweet celebration of all that was and all that is. And like, I know when one day I leave this earth plane, I really hope that that's what happens, in my experience. I mean, like with the people around me, that they celebrate all that I was and all that I still am, and the connections and everything else. And so I really like what you said. I really think it's possible. I mean, of course, feel your feels, and don't judge. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, whatever you're feeling, don't judge. Because if you can just feel your feels, it'll pass through you much quicker
Way easier, right?
than if you start, did I do that right? Should I or shouldn't I or whatever? But just feel it and celebrate it. Like that's so beautiful for all grief.
It's true.
And then the
It's something
next,
to work
and
toward. I
then,
still work toward it. It was a golden period, and I still have
yeah,
to remember that
yeah,
that's a possibility. It's just the opportunity to recognize the beauty. Otherwise, again, once you get older and you realize, oh, I'm on a track now. Like I'm past a certain age, so this is going to be, I'm going to be faced with this. I don't want to face with it going into my, golden years, like thinking about all the things I've lost, but all the things that have been a result of these experiences that I've had. Because it's all
right.
temporary. It's all temporary. So
Right. And it's all just this beautiful, messy, life. And the more experiences, the better. So,
right.
so yeah, I mean, just something to even feel gratitude for. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess this is a good way to end. Anything else you
Yes.
want to say before we say goodbye?
I mean, I remember when I was a kid, one of the expressions that Charlie Brown used to say all the time, or the whole Peanuts gang used to say, was good grief. And so I feel like if we can keep remembering those two words together, that we can move forward with it. Like good grief. Like
Oh,
let's,
I love it. But
it's,
not say it the way he did. Because
yeah,
he was
no,
like,
not with
good
it, not with the
grief. We're
being
like, good
resigned.
grief.
Good grief. Yes. So,
I
because it
love
can
it.
be
I love it. That's what we're gonna have to call this video. Good grief.
good grief.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was good. We looked at that and thanks for joining us and stay tuned for another
Stay out of your comfort zone with us, and
uncomfortable.
you'll feel good with your
That's
grief.
right. That's right. And by the way, if you have any ideas of things you would like us to discuss, please, send us a note or write in the comments. All
Get
right.
involved in the discussion. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. See you next time.
See you next time. Bye.